Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning into this episode. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode. This is a live event that we had on January 12th of 2024. It was an MLK event. And we had Dr. Nicole Price, who was our keynote speaker. We had a panel with four of us, including myself, and then Pastor Michael Brooks, Anthony Mondane, and Greg Ely. And we talked about a lot of issues, kind of celebrating the past and looking forward to the future and all the work that still needs to be done as it relates to civil rights. So I hope you enjoy this. Listen, take care, and have a great new year.
I knew y'all came to the program, but I just said, let's just have her do a concert. Yes, thank you. Well, welcome. I'm Michael Brooks. I serve as the senior pastor here at Oasis Church. I'm so grateful for you all braving the cold elements. But we don't cancel stuff around here. Chiefs fans don't have 80,000 people out there sitting in the cold watching a game that they might not win. Chiefs fans, just go ahead. But so we warm as long as we can be in here, and I'm grateful for this opportunity. I'm going to invite my colleague, Pastor Fred Herron, to come and join us because he was really the master planner of all this and had a desire. So I wanted him to share what his vision and hope was. Housekeeping things, the restrooms are right out these doors, and you'll see the signs on the walls. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful time. It's already a wonderful time because you're here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. And I want to welcome all those who are watching online. We're live streaming this. I know I have friends in Manhattan and other places in America, maybe even outside of America who are tuning in right now. So I want to welcome everybody. And then all my friends who are going to be here but decided to stay home and watch it in the nice, warm, comfortable fireplace at home, right? Okay, so anyway, we're glad you're here. So Michael and I connected probably 15 years ago, and I was reading a Kansas City Star article that came out called The Murder Factory. There was a zip code right here in Kansas City that had more people on death row than any other zip code in the whole state of Missouri. Okay, and I was pastoring a church at the time on the very far north end of Kansas City, Missouri, barely, almost to Smithville, right? And I was sitting there reading this, and I thought, well, this is my city. We got that going on. We need to go right down there and start partnering and doing some work and stuff like that. And so that's actually kind of like the Green Impact Zone was starting right then. I got to know those folks. They said, hey, you need to meet Michael Brooks. And I was at the National Prayer Breakfast, and somebody said, Michael Brooks is here. And it ended up being John Brooks, who's another pastor here in the town. So I ended up meeting John Brooks first, then I met Michael Brooks, and then we started partnering. And we've done a lot of events together. I took an unplanned sabbatical for a few years, and then we were just hanging out, and I said, we need to get an MLK thing going again. And we were kind of late to the game, but it all pulled together really beautifully, except for the weather. You know, that was my only thing. But the vision really is to celebrate the victories of the civil rights movement, but also to realize that we've got a whole lot more work to be done. And my heart, I was pastoring at the time, probably the largest church in the Northland. So predominantly white congregation. And I thought, we got to get people from the Northland down into the core to begin to realize there's still a lot of work to be done. So that was kind of one of my original passions, and it's still there. And I just am excited about the partnership of people that are pulling together. And there's a lot of work to be done, and we need to continue to press forward in that. So that's kind of good.
Give those friends another big hand. I appreciate the friendship. When I graduated from Central High School in 1980, somebody had told me one of my best friends was going to be a white dude from North Kansas City. I would have had a few words for him, but got a whole lot of friends I wouldn't have been friends with from Central High School, but look at God. And then you all are here. There's a number of different congregations, other pastors, leaders. You pastor, would you stand, a leader in the city, would you all stand, ministers and pastors, would you all stand, please? Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you. So we have a full program. We have a keynote speaker. I'm going to introduce her in a few minutes. Can you give a hand to the music with our CBI? And we have some special guests here with us tonight. So we're going to hear from them. We're going to have a panel discussion, and Dr. Percy is going to lead that for us. And then we'll have an offering period. I apologize for not having a program. You know what happens when we have a program. People expect you to stick to it. And so I don't get our programs. It means I ain't got to stick to it because y'all know what we're going to do, so I can just do whatever I want to. But I'm grateful for y'all being here. Martin, Music and the Movement is what we titled this. And let me pause also to recognize Bob Hill, who was also one of the brainchilds for this, whose wife had surgery. I'm going to ask you all to keep him in your prayers, and that's why he can't be here. He is playing nurse practitioner for his wife, and so please keep him in your prayers, but I'm sure he's watching. And so thank you, Bob, for all that you did to put this together. I'm grateful and honored to introduce our keynote speaker, or preacher, or lecturer, or whatever you want to call it. Preachers always have this running joke. What's the difference between a sermon and a lecture? Nothing. So what's the difference between a keynote and a sermon? Nothing. She's gonna come and do what she does. She is also another good friend of ours who is champion what she calls the empathy revolution. And I'm excited about what she's going to present. You can go to her. She's also the CEO of Lively Paradox, and she has done also work in a number of different organizations and groups here. Matter of fact, nationwide. And now we just found out she's got a TED Talk she's going to be doing at Morehouse College. I don't know how. So I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to try to make it to Morehouse so I can go see the TED Talk. But, and I'm not good at intros either, and she asked who's going to introduce. I said, I am, but I'm going to introduce you as my friend who's doing some awesome work here in the city. And she's going to introduce herself because she is of age and she is capable of doing that. The work, she's an author, and I read 2 of her books. The first one blew me away, and after I got through reading, I had to give her a call and say, you wrote my whole story. And then Spark the Heart is what I want all of you to become part of this empathy revolution. You really need to read Spark the Heart. She is a renowned author, a prolific speaker. She is a child of God and somebody who loves God and loves God's people. And I'm so grateful that she's here with us all tonight. So would you help me give a round of applause to Dr. Nicole Banks.
He said I'm of age, but I need you to know I got carded at the grocery store today. serious. And then when I showed her my driver's license, she said, "Oh, wow. Thanks." Now I think I'm getting a little bit of that. I like to tell stories. Y'all okay with that story?
Yes.
So 23 years ago, January, I was working as an engineer in a manufacturing facility about 45 miles away from my home in Kansas City. And I had a 2-year-old toddler, so my day looked like get up early, take him to daycare, go to the plant, work all day, try not to stay for all that extra stuff because I had to get back to daycare because they charge you $5 for every 5 minutes you were late. But this particular Monday in January, I needed to go to the ATM to get some money for the daycare provider. And just to set context, I was so cheap back then. Like, squeaky cheap. Like, don't ask me to spend an extra dime on nothing, because I wasn't going to. And I don't know exactly what happened, but I went to the ATM to pull out just $100, way back when daycare was $100 a week. And it said insufficient funds. Now, I was an engineer, which meant I was salaried, so I got paid that Friday before it's Monday. So I pick a lower dollar amount, and it says insufficient funds. So I decide I'm going to try to take out the lowest amount you can possibly take, $20. This darn ATM machine kicked out the insufficient funds. Now, I don't like to be late, but I want to be early, which is a little bit of a problem. Because I had to be at the plant by 7:30. But I didn't put that much pad time in. So I can't figure this out. And if you're much younger than me, there was no app on your phone. In fact, when I got to the plant, they had internet, but you couldn't use the internet for whatever you wanted. You were supposed to only use it for work, and some of us had a passcode to be able to use the internet. Isn't it amazing I got carded today? Because now y'all know. So I got to get this kid daycare. I call my mom, I'm like, "Mom, I don't have the money for daycare. I need you to pay Miss Margaret." She says yes. I drop my kid off. I get to the plant. I'm there on time. The following week, I get a book in the mail. I still have it because I was really excited about this book. It is I May Not Get There With You. It was written by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. And I love to read, so I was extremely excited about this book. Because I thought, let me just escape this situation I have. But in the first chapter, I get pretty mad. Not just mad, almost disgusted. Because Dyson in this book, he has this idea that he's going to encourage the rest of us that we can be like King because King has all these flaws. And in the first chapter, he's laying out the flaws for us. Now, just to set the stage, I'm one of those people who actually had 2 black male teachers in elementary school. Not 1, not 0, 2. And Mr. Charles Cooper, my 6th grade male black teacher, had me memorize the speech of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King that most people call the I Have a Dream speech when I was in 6th grade. So King for me is like this. And this book cost $25. It was more than $10 more than I had. I want my money back. Because I couldn't see how anybody would take this approach to addressing how the rest of us could get involved in the movement. But I was just like many of us, that we think that the ramp to get onto how we can solve some of our nation's persistent problems is real narrow. That there is a way. But it was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said, none of us know the way. And so when people use distraction, divisiveness, destruction as the methodology to try to continue to tear down people, systems, structures, when we make progress, I always wonder, what is it that King would have said? And what I've come to realize can be summed up in a concept called the curb cut. So if you want to step down off of the sidewalk, there's a ramp to help you get down to the street. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's called a curb cut. I use curb cuts. When my son was 2 years old and I had a stroller, I would push him on the curb cut. I wouldn't pop a wheelie off the curb, I'm using the curb cut. When I travel and I have luggage, I use the curb cut. You probably sometimes use the curb cut just cause, right? I ain't gonna step up for whatever reason that day. But why was the curb cut designed? For people who use wheelchairs. You see, if we had designed it for a stroller, it wouldn't satisfy the needs of everybody. If we had designed it for your luggage, it wouldn't satisfy the needs of everybody. If we designed it for skateboarders or for any other reasons besides people who use wheelchairs, it wouldn't satisfy everybody. It's called liberatory design, to design for the people who need it the most, not because they're deficient, but because it is the just thing to do. And so when we think about Americans and who is the equivalent of who needs the curb cut, it is always Black people. If you are designing for anybody else, you might as well have made your curb cut for me with my stroller. And when I think about the fact that all of us are still here and in this room, it takes me back to Frederick Douglass saying, it is a marvel that the Negro is still here. But when I hear people talk about the state of Black Americans, here's what I hear. These young people today. Oh my God, the demasculation of the man. The alpha female. Where are the fathers? Oh my God, the music. It was Dr. Ibram X. Kendi who said there's nothing wrong with Black people except when we think there's something wrong with Black people.
All right.
To look at a person who has been able to overcome every single institution in the United States of America without exception has disproportionality based on race. Every single one. Education, healthcare, criminal justice systems, economic systems. There's not a single institution in the United States of America that doesn't have disproportionality based on race. And so what do? Instead of saying, let us figure out how to solve for the system and the structural issues, which is what King was doing. He wasn't creating programs. How does a job program fix economic disparity? It was King who said that is putting the cart before the horse. People with power understand that we have to dismantle systems that do not work and build new systems that do.
Right.
And instead of looking outside of Black people for the answers, you think people in wheelchairs don't know how to get up on the curb. You think they didn't know how wide the ramp needed to be? And I like to use that example because nobody says, well, you know, there's an exception to the rule. I know this one person who uses a wheelchair and they get out of their wheelchair, pull their bodies up on the curb, and they make it work. So I don't know why the rest of us can't figure out how to do it.
Come on now.
And so the primary reason why I told you the 1374 story is, at that time in my life, I didn't really understand capitalism. I didn't understand materialism. I didn't understand right flight. I didn't understand systems and structures and institutional racism. It was Gerald Pitts, actually, who taught me those things. The bald-headed white man right there. And I feel like it is important for each of us as we learn to talk about the fact that we have not always known. Because when we do, that allows us to have the empathy necessary to bring other people along on the journey.
Amen.
When we behave and act as if we have always known, then my job is to, I don't know why you don't know. If I may, can I? Please, just somebody give me a yes, go ahead. The person who organized the March on Washington was one of the gayest people I have ever seen on video.
Yeah.
When we decide that the intersection of Blackness must be separate from sexual orientation and religion and gender and all of these other things, it is a distraction. It is a distraction that prevents us from moving forward. So what do we do? And why did I mention the 1374 story? My friends, after I came out of that situation, and I know Michael Brooks is probably holding his breath, hoping that I don't say the title of the book. I'm not going to. My friends started calling the strategies that I personally used to get out of that 1374 fiasco, Operation 1374. And all it is the opposite of distract, divide, destroy. It is, how do you focus on what you are here to do to progress the movement forward? If somebody else decides that they want to play certain music in their congregation, my role is to figure out how I can do what I need to do in order to make the ramp wider for more Black Americans. It is a distraction for me to be divisive about anything else. Focus. Focus on your stuff, your lane, what you are doing. Focus. How do we overcome divisiveness? Unity. Unity, not uniformity. If uniformity, this idea that we will put on a shirt, and listen, I'm just describing, I'm not judging. I am more Malcolm than I am Martin. Really? Two men who understood the global oppression of Black people everywhere. Two men who understood that we had to build the capacity of Black people to understand that there was nothing uniquely wrong with them. Two men who understood that we had to focus on legislative agenda in order to move things forward. Two men who pushed white folks to recognize that tension did not mean that I'm mean. It just means that I want the foot off my neck.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right. Yeah.
How is it that 50 years later we are pitting two dead men against each other? Divisiveness.
Come on.
People will quote James Baldwin and then say, I don't think that gay people should be in my church. Are you kidding me? Hypocrisy is the opposite of empathy. You cannot uphold the person in one instance and in another disparage who they actually are as people. And I never used to speak on this topic because it wasn't popular to do so until my friend was stabbed 139 times because she was lesbian. Our silence is causing death and destruction.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I came up with the idea that empathy was going to be the key to help us move the needle forward, it is not because I believe I have the answer. It was King who said nobody knows the answer. But what I feel in my heart is that the people of Kansas City, as the heart of the nation, have the ability to spark an empathy revolution throughout the rest of the country and help this country live up to the things it says it is. When we decide that we're going to focus and we are going to practice unity, you can't do those things without adding in that I am going to create and innovate. And guess who is the best at creating and innovating? We make it, they take it. It doesn't matter what we make. So you tell me why somebody steals something that ain't valuable. That lets you know it's valuable. You tell me why somebody would say certain things to a child in a school that would crush their spirit if they didn't know it was valuable. They know it's valuable. So love your families. Understand that it's because of Jim Crow laws that Black people don't show as much affection. Not that there's something uniquely wrong with Black people. Tell people that. Educate. Don't try to erase.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I regularly get told, Nicole, you gotta stop looking backwards. My friend Jim tells me, we gotta look forward. I am not actually a historian. But what I have come to learn is that if we don't look back at history, it just looks like there's something wrong with the people.
Yes, yes.
And I don't know how to do this, but I'm telling everyone who will listen. The first thing that we have to do is recognize that empathy does not mean kindness. It is not sugary sweetness. It is understanding that whatever another person thinks, feels, or believes, it makes total sense to them.
All right.
I can't take my feelings and put them on you. I have to look at your body of work and say, is this a flawed character or a character flaw? How do you know the difference? I can tell you flawed characters by 3 traits. They are distractions, they are divisive, and they destroy things.
Yes.
And when you put your energy, your vote, your passion, your commitment behind that, you are saying, I am not interested in progressing the movement. And so the one thing that I hope to leave you with is that I have a dear friend who, whenever I talk about all the challenges, because there's plenty of challenges, right?
Many.
He always sends a call with, well, we got work to do. We, not I. We, not you. We. You do it your way, I do it my way. But we come together because the ramp needs to be wider. If it's too narrow, you can't get up it. My hope is that as we think about the work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, which I think it is ironic that on his birthday observed that we do service, when the man was dying for us for fair wages.
Come on.
But okay. I have to eat my own cooking. You do it your way. And we need legislative action as well as programmatic content. I was talking to my son this week, and he was discouraged, that's the word I use, because it just feels like to him in his 25 years on the planet that his entire life, the prison industrial complex has been a thing. His entire life, people have been homeless and on the street. His entire life, Black women have been dying in rates greater than others. My job is to let him know that in my lifetime, some of those extreme things were not true.
Mm-hmm.
It was because there are people who are focused, who are united, and who are innovative around hatefulness that they stay true.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Manipulators and some of the evilest people in the world are empathetic, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Stick with me. How can I convince you to do something that is going to harm you unless I know what you're feeling so that I can push that button?
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get well-meaning people to stop doing that thing we do. Where you go, oh, I wouldn't do that, so they wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Come on now.
How much proof we need?
Mm.
How much proof we need? So, in the spirit of eating my own cooking, I actually finished this book 23 years later. And I take back everything I said in 2001. Because what Dyson was trying to do was to show each of us, do it depressed, do it with a storied history, do it in North Kansas City, do it at 80 as an octogenarian, do it as a gender non-binary person, do it as a creative, do it as a woman in a pulpit, just do it.
Just do it.
If the people who did it before us were not some magical unicorns, they were regular people.
Yes.
With families who laughed, who experienced joy, who experienced pain. We now know the king suffered with great amounts of depression. Regular people who just decided that they are going to be focused, they are going to practice unity, and they refuse to be distracted. Thank you.
It's easy down there. He's going to share with us how all of us can participate in the work going forward. While he's coming, let me ask all the panelists to come up to the stage, and we will rearrange things so we can get started to the next part.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Brooks. Have you been blessed this evening? Thank about you, but I'm glad I prayed the code to come through tonight. You know, it says we're two or three gathered in the presence of the Lord. He is there, and I believe the atmosphere is warm in this place. Do you believe that? Yeah. I believe that. That's true. You know what? We got work to do. We got work to do, and in order for us to do that work, it takes finances, it takes investment, and we want to make sure we cover all the obligations from this evening. You know, Luke chapter 6, verse 38 says, "Give, and it will be given to you, pressed down, shaken together, running over by your measure. Your measure, you make the measure that it will be returned to you." 2 Corinthians puts it like this: "You sow sparingly, you will reap sparingly. You sow bountifully, you will reap bountifully." So I'm asking you tonight just to pray and see what God would ask you to do to give towards this effort. There are a few ways to give. If you want to, you can write a check out to the Oasis Church. If you have cash, you know, cash is always good. If you have that, if you want to do check and cash, you can come up now and just place those in the basket. If you can also give by PayPal or GiveFly. Just search the Oasis Church International, and there's also a card machine where you can give in the foyer as well. I'm going to cover this time in prayer. Afterwards, if you have any gifts, you can bring them up front, and then we'll be getting prepared for our panel. Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity. We thank you, Lord, that you are in this place. And Father, we know that you will make sure that the resources are provided and available so that we can take care of the work that we still need to do. We thank you, Father, for calling us to this place and giving us a front row seat of what you're about to do in this new season. We don't take that for granted. And we pray this in the mighty and matchless name of Jesus. And all those who agree said amen. 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 If you want to have gifts, you can give here, or you can also give the other.
Yes, the panelists can come on up, and while they're coming, I'm going to provide the introduction, and then Dr. Price is going to come and oversee the panel discussion. All right. First off, let me again thank all of you for being here. Our panel this afternoon, or this evening, consists of 4 preachers. Y'all, if I keep on saying they're my friends, you're going to think I'm friends with everybody. Ain't yes. But they are. First of all, we have Pastor Anthony Mondane, because we needed somebody young on the panel. Because the rest of us got too old. But he is a trendsetter. He's pastor of the First Christian Church in Independence. But he is the trendsetter he is the first African American to serve on the school board in Independent School District. But he's also, not only just educated, but he also is a banker. His subject this afternoon or this evening is education and economics. Pastor Greg Ely, he's heard as he received offering this afternoon, also a trendsetter. He is the proud pastor of the Colonial Presbyterian Church, a traditionally predominantly white church in South Kansas City, and they call him the pastor. They call the right one, because he has the demeanor, the patience, and what I've learned from him, the love, to do a good job. They call the right African American pastor. All of us could not have done it. All of us could not have done it. You also heard from Fred Aaron. He is the pastor of Living Water Christian Church. Some of y'all, he was talking about how we met. Some of y'all remember years ago the Convoy of Hope. He's the one that was the originator of the Convoy of Hope. And because of what he did, we were able to feed thousands of people every summer through that. That's where we became friends. His subject matter is going to be white nationalism and white supremacy. And I'm just up here because it's my church. No, I'm going to be talking about trauma-informed care and housing. One of the things that we try to do, myself and Dr. Price actually co-presented during the Concerned Clergy's conference this year, trying to combine these two thought processes of empathy and trauma and being trauma-informed, because I think they go together. And the more we can talk about, again, how the history has been traumatic, and also now how we can put ourselves in people's shoes to really understand where they're coming from. I struggle with that too. I still struggle with it on a monthly basis, on a daily basis, how to try to understand why people do what they do. But I trade on a counselor and psychologist, so that's always been my thought process, trying to figure out why people do the stuff they do and how can they do the stuff they do and keep on calling themselves Christians. Amen, somebody. And so I'm going to go ahead and Dr. Price to come back. Each one of us is going to take about 3 to 4 minutes to introduce our subject matter and talk about it from our perspective. Then Dr. Price will come with questions that will the panel answer.
They get to sit down. Okay.
You just gotta make sure, so you want me to just introduce myself, or you want my 3 points in my text? I just need to be clear, so we're all on the same page. No, well, my name is Pastor Greg Ely. I do have the privilege of serving at Colonial Presbyterian Church. Prior to that, I was a pastor at Paseo Baptist Church in the city. So God, in His comic way, allowed me to pastor an all-black church in the inner city. And then 6 years ago, moved me to an all-white church in the suburbs. And all the joys that come along with that. It has been a phenomenal opportunity to see God move. But one of the things that was a stumbling block was when I told my story. I told my story one Sunday. It was actually after the George Floyd incident, murder that occurred. And I was asked to tell my story. We were doing online church at the time. You know, it was COVID. And after I told my story, I received emails and letters, and I'll tell you my story here in a second. I had emails and letters to come to me from people telling me that they could no longer hear me preach because when they heard me tell my story, or when I preached, all they heard was anti-police. And I want to begin my story by telling you I am not anti-police. I believe we need police, and I believe they serve well. And I believe that there are a lot of great policemen, but something is wrong.
Yeah.
And we have to admit that something is wrong.
Yeah.
So back in 2006, I was preaching a revival, youth revival in Austin, Texas. And on the last evening, I was on my way home, and I was on the phone with my wife. She was, at the time we were living in Dallas, so I was on the phone with her. And I looked back, and this car was driving behind me like it was going 100 miles an hour, like it was floating. And I just remember saying, man, that car is going bam. And just slammed in the back of me. And when my car stopped spinning, I looked out the window, and I can still see it as if I'm right there today. This body laying underneath this 18-wheeler. He was about a 6 foot or so black male. He had like braids in his hair. He had a camouflage tank top on and red jeans, and he was laying there. I don't know if he was dead or alive. He ended up being alive, but he was knocked out. And so, you know, immediately you check your arms and your legs to make sure everything is okay. And then I pushed the door open because the airbag had blew. Smoke is blowing everywhere. I pushed the door open, and I run out the car, and there are 10 police officers pointing guns at me, running at me, telling me, get out. And I put my hands up in there around you in the middle of I-35 in Austin, Texas. And the Travis County Sheriff's Office are all running at me, guns are blazing, get on the ground. So I get on the ground, put my hands behind my back. They handcuffed me. That's why when I see the video of George Floyd being kneed, that was the position that I was in on the ground on I-35. And I was in handcuffs, not harmful. And then they sicked the dog on me. And they released their dog, and I still to this day have the scars, the markings of that dog on my back. So when I walk around the house, my wife and my children are reminded of that evening when they didn't know if Daddy was coming home. And when they finally realized that I wasn't the person, the guy uncuffed me and said, we sorry, we thought you were the other guy.
Oh.
And of course, we had them take care of that. But then when I moved to Kansas City, I moved up north. And the first 6 months I was here, I was stopped 6 times by the same police officer. Once because my license plate was crooked. Once because he said, what was I doing up driving this early in the morning with a hoodie on? Once I got pulled over right here in Kansas City, Missouri, as I'm pulling into my parking spot at Paseo Baptist Church. And I said, my name is on the sign right there. You know, and he said, I couldn't get you for not having a seatbelt on. I'm not saying that we don't need police. I believe we need police, but something is wrong. I believe there's a training issue. I had a conversation with a previous chief of police in Kansas City. He said, we don't do enough threat perception training for our police officers. teaching them how to know when there is a threat, teaching them how to de-escalate and not escalate a situation. I just believe that something needs to be done. I want our police around us, but through our efforts in here, at least in Kansas City, we have to demand that there is better training. Thank you.
My name is Anthony J. Bondane. I pastor Restoration Life Church in Independence, Missouri. I'm a husband, father, and I manage a bank, PNC Bank. Very proud of the work that I do. I've been in banking for 10 years now. I've committed a lot of my life to serving the community and providing financial education and bridging the gaps in the wealth gap, basically, in our community. Most recently, I worked for We Development Federal Credit Union, which the whole purpose of the credit union is to be in the inner city and provide solutions for families and people who are attacked by predatory lending. That is something that I am personally very, very moved by, and I will speak of these issues until I cannot speak anymore. There's a very serious issue when it comes to what's fair and what's right in underserved communities. If you notice, you will see a predatory lender everywhere in these communities. And that's intentional. That is not an accident. That is not a coincidence. That's not a oops, okay? And there are targets in these communities. And the targets look like me. They do. And after researching, I recognize that there are more people of color that take advantage of these lending opportunities than others do. But when you think about that, there's a method behind all of those things. When people will come to me and sit in front of me and tell me, Anthony, I need a loan to pay off this payday loan. I need a loan to pay my rent. I need a loan for and these are things where, I'm duty bound by a job by my employer to do the best that I can to make a good loan. But I also recognize that sometimes people just don't have other resources. They don't have other choices, or at least that's what they believe. So my job is to educate those people who feel that their last option and only option is to go and give themselves to payday lenders. My recommendation to you and to anyone you love and know is to never, ever, ever, ever get a payday loan. It's never worth it at all. They will structure things so precisely down to the 10th year, the day of the 10th year when that time expires lawfully, okay? They will come and knock on your door and get that money and however they can. If it's $200, it's $300, whatever, they will do it. And in my community, we are so used to just surviving, getting by, making ends meet, doing what I gotta do. Well, the white man, this. We are so conditioned to that mindset. And I will fight until there's no more fight left to educate not just people of color, but all people, because it's not just people of color. Let me be clear. It's not just us, okay? But the concern is majority of it is, okay? And so I want to spend my time and my effort not just preaching about Jesus Christ, which is my primary responsibility, but I also care about the whole person. I want to tell you how to be wealthy, and I want to tell you how to actually go apply for a loan. I want to tell you what you can do to get approved and how you can structure your life so much so where when you go to that lender, you can be ready to get a good loan and how to look for the best rates and all of those things. That's my focus, and encouraging people in my community that you don't just have to accept anything. We have options. And I think one of the biggest downfalls in our community is just accepting what's given.
or accepting what's available. We are at a place where so many people in different spaces are fighting with us. We can demand, we can make certain requests that, my grandparents weren't able to make. And there are spaces that we fulfill now that are historic. They call my election historic. And after further research, not only am I the first person of color on the Board of Education, in my city, there's never been a person of color elected to any office. And someone asked me, one of the news reporters asked me, they said, well, why do you think you're the first person of color to run? And I had to stop and say, no, ma'am, you are not correct. We do run. We are on balance. We're not elected.
That's the difference.
I'm the first elected person of color in the history of Independence, Missouri. I'm proud of that. And I want that to make change and create, widen the curb slant, what is the term? Curb cut. Amen. I want to continue to do that, but my job is in vain if I'm it. So there is work to do. This room is full of people who are obviously interested in progressing forward. You are not here accidentally or unintentionally. You are here on purpose, even if you don't understand or agree with everything being said tonight. You are here very intentionally. So I encourage each of you to become a sponge and take in everything that we are sharing from our perspective and match it with yours and ask yourself, what can I do to work together to be the we? Because it's not a them, it's not a they, it's a us. We all have work to do. And I want to be a part of that work continually. I hope I've captured. Amen.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, man. I grew up in the Northland. I went to Park Hill High School. I grew up in a very white high school. And I grew up Southern Baptist in a very white church. Okay? And I came to Jesus at that church. And so was discipled by white Southern Baptists, right? And we had only a few black families at Park Hill High School in the 70s. Very few. They're all friends of mine. We all did sports together. I didn't realize there was a race problem. I was in an almost all-white school with like maybe 3 black families. We all did sports together. We were all friends. And I just assumed that this is how the world worked. Black and white people get along, and there's way more white people than black people, And I never talked to those friends about what it was like growing up black in a mostly white high school. I didn't even think to assume that it was different just because we were friends. It didn't feel different to me. I actually reached out to one of those friends just this past week, and I said, hey, we're doing this MLK thing. And we were going to get together and have that conversation, and I was hoping she'd be able to make it for the weather. I've got her scheduled this week. But nonetheless, I went to Baptist universities, Baptist seminaries. We didn't celebrate MLK. The crazy thing is, I never even put 2 and 2 together and I didn't really realize the racist history of the denomination that I was raised in and why we didn't celebrate MLK. All I heard about was the things that you brought up in the front end of the book. Oh, MLK wasn't a good guy, like da-da-da-da-da-da, Right? So I mean, it was, and then, but I always had black friends, and in my brain, I just didn't see the issues. I moved back to the Northland in 1990 after college and seminary and on staff at a white church, and then I started church in a mostly white community, right? And grow this church, but we had some diversity. We had some black, some Asian, some Latino. Greg came all the time. And, but when I read that article on the murder factory, it's like oh man, because we are already serving in the homeless and in a lot of different ways in the urban core. But that's when I really started an in-depth process of trying to connect with Black pastors. Michael, one of the first ones, but Greg too. Greg, what year did you start at DeSato?
2009.
Yeah, so about right at the same time. Michael and Greg have been two very close friends. And I've just talked, my experience with these two guys, hearing, oh, is that right? We're dating ourselves. Michael and I are the same age, but I think I'm older than you, right? Yeah. All right, anyway. So, I'm the elder up here. All right, so, but nonetheless, just hearing their stories, I didn't know what it was like to be a Black parent raising kids in a white world, and how you had to raise them to not get killed by any number of angles, right? I didn't know that stuff. I didn't know what it was like to be Black and pull into a white gas station and get mistreated and discriminated against because you're Black. I didn't know all of that. And so just the relationships and the friendships and just hearing the stories. And I think one of the big things is that if we don't understand each other's trauma and we don't understand each other's history, we can't do empathy. Would that be a good statement, Nicole? And so I became immersed in the Black community because of Greg and Michael and friendship and relationship. And then my heart just grew bigger and bigger and bigger for the Black community. I'm very disappointed in my white evangelical friends in America, But I tell you this, I do try to keep an ear to that community, and there are a few white evangelicals who have pretty big platforms who do speak out against Christian nationalism, authoritarianism, and racism. One of the guys is a guy named Phil Vischer, who is the creator of Veggie Tales. Like most white Christian, evangelical Christians, raise their kids on Phil Vischer's Veggie Tales. Did Black parents do that? You did, all right. So, Veggie Tale guy, right? Well, he came out right after he doesn't know what it is, right? I know. It's a white thing. Anyway, so Calvin, were you raised on Veggie Tales? All right. You were to connection. That's right. So Phil, by the way, after George Floyd, he came out with a 17-minute video. It's the best, shortest, pithy video I've seen yet on white supremacy, white racism, and the racism of the white community and white privilege. Basically, white supremacy and white privilege by white evangelical. Boom, 17 minutes. You can look it up. Holy Post, Race in America. And I posted that. I tried to get it out to many of my white friends as possible. And, when I was pastor in the Northland, when we first met, I was trying to move white people down to the core and begin to build relationships. And once we build relationships and hear each other's stories and histories and trauma, we begin to break down barriers and begin to love each other. And so that has been a passion of mine, and it still is. And I had to take a sabbatical for a while from my own trauma. And then I'm back. And then, Greg, I don't know if you remember, we did an MLK thing one time. And there's another white pastor. And remember, he got up and he said he grew up in northern Wisconsin. And he said there wasn't a Black person within 7 counties of him. And he said, we Swedes didn't get along with the Norwegians. And I thought, we human beings can certainly inflict a lot of harm on each other. It doesn't even have to be black-white. It can just be human to human. And so we need to dive into trauma and history and listen and then build relationships around the healing of that. And that's a big passion. And I think that the more white people we can help understand white privilege and white supremacy and hear people's personal stories through relationship to understand that, it'll make a difference. And so that's a big passion of mine. So I am incredibly passionate. And a big thing too was like, hey, I didn't grow up celebrating MLK. I want to influence as many white people as I can to dive into that, celebrate that, and to be a part of that. 150 years, slavery's been ended, 60 years of civil rights movement. We've had a black president. There's so many white people say, what's the problem? And it's all there. All you have to do is listen to people, listen to their histories, listen to their trauma, and you'll begin to see with new eyes the issue that is at stake. The system is still rigged for white people, 100%. And we need to do work. There's way more work to do for the civil rights movement. So that's my passion.
So I wasn't introduced to this work. I really became more aware of what was really going on once I left Kansas City and joined the military. I won't go into that whole story. It'll take way longer than y'all want to be here. But I really have decided, just by what I believe God has called me to do, is try to get the church to really understand how we have to deal with people's trauma and deal with it in a different way. One of the moves that God commissioned me to do once we started this vocation was a move from judgment to empathy. The church has spent hundreds of years judging folk because of what they said or what they did, and I could be a poster child for it. But we gotta move from just telling people that they're wrong to understanding why they did what they did. That's what empathy is. And we have to be honest about the fact that what African Americans and blacks, whatever we want to call ourselves this century, because we were colored, and then we were Negroes, and then we were black, and then we're African American, whatever, and none of those represent a nation. But the reality is the trauma has gone on ever since the first ship landed on whatever the shore was, and it has not ended. I have no hope that politics is going to fix this. What I do believe is those of us who've been called by God to do something different can fix it, and we will face it. Because you can't fix what you're not willing to face. And it's going to take some hard conversations, and that's why we don't talk, because a lot of us don't want to have the hard conversations. It's going to take us disagreeing on stuff. So everybody is speaking from their passion, so I've got 15 of them, I can't tell you all of them. But housing was the issue that got brought to my mind when I went through the race equity training. And one of the things that came to mind real quickly was, I know for a fact growing up, our parents were told, buy a house, get a 30-year loan, get it paid off, and you've made it. However, after I got grown, I figured out everybody wasn't educated. The home itself is supposed to be one of the things that help you develop wealth. Not in our community though, because we kept it for 30 years. By the time 30 years was up, the house wouldn't work much, and the kids that grew up in the house really didn't want it. And the folk that moved out of the neighborhood to get away from us, now moving back in the neighborhood, buying up the houses cheap, rehabbing them, and then selling them now. The house my parents grew up in, if they rehabbed it and put it on the market, would be worth $250,000 today.
Yeah.
It's absolutely ridiculous. So my story is this. I went to Ladd Elementary School, 3745 Benton Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri, 64128, I remember. When I went there from kindergarten to second grade, it was a mixed school. Gym class, the subject matter was learning how to square dance. Yeah, okay. It was not a black school, trust me. But from 1967 up to 1970, we saw a total transformation of that school. And all the white kids moved, and the school became almost entirely black by the time I was in the third grade. I visibly saw the white flag from the community. There were individuals, I know for a fact, one of my best friends, I hated my name because there's 5 Michaels in the class. And so Michael Jones, who lived across the street, his father was a doctor, his father was white, his mother was black, and he came to school with best friends. Matter of fact, my mother was their homekeeper. While we were in school, she was the maid for the house. They came to school and said, we're leaving, we're moving. I said, why are you moving? My dad just said, we gotta move. What we didn't know was the white families in that neighborhood were sent letters saying the blacks are moving in and it's time for you all to move out. And what was developed then was what we know as Fort Parkway. Benton Boulevard used to be the place where doctors and lawyers and rich folks stayed. All right, the school is on 37th and Benton. All those individuals moved out. You literally, when we grew up in grade school, you could go across the street and talk to a lawyer. You'd go around the corner and talk to the doctor. The teachers went to the same church you went to. So you got in trouble in school, you got in trouble in church on Sunday too. And they told everybody at church how you protected them. We literally saw their community turn from a mixed community to an all-black community within about 4 or 5 years. Then the last thing I'll say this, and then we decided that once we started making money, the best thing we could do is get out of the neighborhood. You want to be successful, you got to move. And back then, Grandview was the place to move. Grandview ain't the place to move now, is it? Y'all ain't talking to me. They wouldn't let us in Raytown. They kept Raytown locked down. You couldn't drive through Raytown when the sun went down either. I remember playing basketball in Raytown and leaving the court. And no matter what Sunday it was, because it was a car of 6, 7, 8 black kids, we get pulled over every time from Raytown to 63rd Street. Simply because it was a car load full of black kids. And they knew we were there. We went over there and played every week. So the housing issue, I believe, is the out. And I think the church has to get more astute on how to help individuals become homeowners, how to get good loans, if we are America is going to be capitalistic until the day we die. Either you got it or you don't. In order to operate in the system, you got to have some capital. But we got to change our mindset about how that happens. Because the traditional ways have kept us right where we are. All right, I'm on my soapbox.
This is about to be a hard job for several reasons. They call me the great debater, and I got plenty of things I could debate about what was said. And I'm not going to. And the other thing is, every single last one of these speakers took 3 times as much time as they had. How am I going to moderate this panel? I'm so glad somebody screamed out empathy. I understand exactly what they think, feel, and believe, which is that they can take as long as they want when they have the microphone. So how are we going to do this? Interestingly enough, I think when people hear black men talk about their experiences with police, they think it's kind of an isolated situation and event. But when I was 15 years old, studying for my U.S. history test for Jean Blair, who was my high school history teacher, my mom didn't lock the front door because she was the community cook. And so it was unlocked. And I heard this really loud noise at the door. My mother was gone. And then I heard it twice more. And the next thing I know, there are 10 or 15 police officers in our living room with guns pointed to my 15-year-old head. I was on the floor for almost 2 hours. They brought in dogs who went through our house, turned everything over. The dogs found a bag of potpourri. By the time it was all said and done, all I heard them say to my mother was, "I'm sorry." Wrong house. We had to fix our own door. And what I hate, Pastor Ely, is that you have to start with a caveat.
Right.
Yep.
Not all police officers are bad. I think we need police.
Yeah.
And the burden of having to do that is solely on people who are in an oppressed state. It never happens to anybody else. And in my work, if 1% of people are awful, I would say that probably more than that are. it is my job, if I care about the community of practice, to out those people.
Yep.
To shun them, to not recommend them. And so I want you to talk more about policing and from your perspective, what you think are the key challenges, but I'm a push you to leave out all the caveats. Because when we're trying to get people to change because of facts,
Yeah, and I appreciate you, calling that out. My brothers and sisters, part of our Kingdom Oneness team at Colonial. Thank you for Maureen and Joy for being here and representing us. There's a level of PTSD that comes with telling my story. Because as I stated before, when I was asked to tell my story, it was met with turbulence and pushback, and actually, the second time I referred to my story in a sermon, I didn't even tell the whole story. I just referred to it because I was trying to show them how I was able to interact with someone, and God gave me an opportunity to share the message with him because I could understand. Because he was talking about police, and I was like, hey, I understand. I showed him my scar. And I was just saying how God would give you an opportunity and give you the message, the word to speak to someone. And I got an email after that that said, you keep bringing that up. And because of that, my son being a police officer, I am going to have to leave the church.
erasure.
And so that is partly most of the reason why I feel the need to have to disclaim before I tell the story. But understand, I raised two boys. I say raised now because my youngest son turned 18 in November. Mama said he's still a baby, but I had to teach them how to drive in Liberty, Missouri, being a black man. I had to go pick my son up because he was playing with some friends in an elementary school and get my son out the back of a police car. My son was pulled over because he was speeding, got a ticket. He thought he paid it. Got a message in the mail that it wasn't paid because he actually paid the fees, not the ticket. Went to the courthouse to go pay the ticket. The guy says, oh, standard procedure is I have to put your son in handcuffs. So it's those type things that make me feel like we have an issue. My son was jogging in my neighborhood, and all I could see was a Ahmaud Arbery as he ran off in the distance, and I couldn't see his silhouette anymore. And he turned the corner. So yeah, it's a very sensitive issue.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that and sharing the trauma that happens. And most of the time, people think about trauma related to Black people. Mr. Ailey, I want you to talk about white supremacy, but I want to qualify it a little bit, okay? I'm sorry, Fred, I want you to qualify this a little bit because I'm going to share the work of Res Mumanaka, who's done My Grandmother's Hands. If you all are not familiar with the work, it's Releasing Racialized Trauma from the Body. And the way his book is set up, Pastor Ely, is that he has an entire section about the police body. And he suggests that the trauma that gets passed down from watching other people harm other people all day needs to be released from the body, and when it's not, you pass that harm through other people. Okay? So he says it's not about training, actually, because you're making split-second decisions, and whatever the body is feeling is going to come out when you're making split-second decisions. And so when we talk about what does Kansas City North look like, and Park Hill, and I wonder sometimes, why do we not have the conversation about why Independence is white? Why Kansas City North is white? Why, when all the mixed folks, the mixed neighbors move out and it's all Black, is there an insinuation that that Black neighborhood is now bad? when nothing changed except for the color of the people living in the homes. When someone talks about why Black people are subjected to predatory lending, why we don't go back and say, my family had their 100 acres stolen, I would be rich. It had it not been for the white people who did these things. And so when we don't talk about what it looks like to stand there and watch your grandfather hang a person, there is trauma passed down. And white people don't want to deal with that trauma, which is why I believe they can't handle any kind of tension related to racism. So I'd be curious to know. I know that was a lot. I'd be curious to know, when you discuss how white privilege manifests itself in our community, and I'm talking about our Kansas City metropolitan area. What else can we do? Because you're doing a great job with your personal relationships. What else can we do?
Wow. Right. That's not. But this book that you just referenced, My Grandmother's Hand, I just read this. So Bill Rostein is the regional overseer for the Disciples of Christ in Kansas City. And I just went through a process to get my standing with the Disciples of Christ. And Bill had me read this book. And I'm in a 2-year training with mindful meditation with Tara Brock and Jack Cornfield. And so his book, I'd like to get him here to Kansas City. His resume is...
All you need is 50 grand. That's his...
Is that what it is? Dang. All right. Are any of you really multimillionaire or people listening, my friends in New York? All right, anyway, who are watching tonight. But I think we could we talked about this, Michael, Daryl Forte and Stacey Graves, and do a white, a blue body, black body trauma talk with this guy. I think it would be amazing. I think we could pull it together. But
I got a question. When you read it, did you do the exercises?
I did.
Okay.
And we created action steps that I'm going to go over before we leave tonight, that are future things, not just an event tonight, but things that we want to unroll through this whole year. And then I think we could pack this place out next year for another MLK event.
Yeah.
And keep building a community that cares, is moving the civil rights movement forward, and for Kansas City. And
The beloved community idea.
Just keep expanding through relationships primarily, but organizing all kinds of events. So I'll go over a action step thing before we leave tonight of that very. You want me to do it now?
Do you have one of those for everybody?
We have one for everybody, and Matt,
I think we should pass those out so we keep you
can you
honest.
make that visual for the people who are watching online as well, this bookmark? So, yeah, we're going to hand this out. So the next thing is going to be, by the way, the sponsors of this event are the Concerned Clergy Coalition, Missouri Faith Voices, the Oasis Church, and I have a nonprofit called Spirituality Adventures, and those are the sponsors for this event. The next action step is going to be Missouri Faith Voices on February 2nd and 3rd. It's going to happen right here. It's going to be a Justice Revival service on Friday night, and then Saturday they're going to do a training event. Michael can speak more to that. The next thing, Anthony Mundane is going to do a Wealth Harvest Workshop Saturday, March 16th, right here at 10 a.m. And then we've got another Missouri Faith Voices event happening April 12th and 13th. And then Michael, you should share, Michael just did a pilgrimage, a civil rights pilgrimage down in Georgia. And he said it was so impactful. And I said, well, let's get a bus and take a group from Kansas City down there and do it again and make it a. So that we're looking at the end of July for that kind of a thing. So I'm wanting to build relationships, break down the barriers through understanding our trauma and our history and loving each other, and then continuing to do events that let's do civil rights here in Kansas City and make an impact. There's still a lot of work to be done.
I love it. I'm glad you put this handout together because you were ready. Somebody must have told you.
Hey, I was ready. Yeah.
Pastor Brooks went to Birmingham, Alabama, right, to the Selma and Montgomery to be able to see some of the work that had been done there, the lynching museum, legacy museum. Yeah. You send it to me. Send me your question. I'll give it. I'll ask it, or just write an answer to me. I'll ask. Because while we're listening, I think it's important to just know the burden is not just on Black people. It keeps going back to there's nothing uniquely wrong with Black people. We have all been reared in this system. We all have trauma from this system. And what is amazing about Black people is that we have managed to still maintain culture and music and food and all the beautiful things that make us human. Meanwhile, sometimes when you ask what are the benefits of being white, folks are like, what do you mean? And when you give up being Norwegian or Scottish or Welsh to be white, you give up food and music and culture. And that's just unfortunate. It's really unfortunate. And we have to talk about the fact that racism is hurting everybody. We talk about it as if it's only hurting Black people, which is part of what our challenge and our problem is. That police officer or those police officers who sick the dogs on you have trauma from that event. Might not recognize it, but they do. Give them the questionnaire. You go watch somebody else be harmed, maimed. It's a trauma event. Now, Pastor Mundane, you are talking about economics. She gave me her whole phone. That means she ain't doing nothing wrong. She gave me her whole phone. I said, she put that cash app on here. Send myself some money. So I am not going to do that. She trusts me. Because there was something that was said that made me bristle. It didn't make me, didn't put me in disagreement, but it made me bristle. And it is this idea that Black people are making bad choices just because they're making bad choices. I get to make good choices because I have good options. When we tell people to make good choices, they make the best choice of the options they have.
Come on.
You made better choices because you had better options.
Make it plain now.
When I had Operation 1374, for some people that would have resulted in homelessness. I could probably name 10 people in this room who would let me live with you if I needed to for at least a week. And then after that 5 days, sis, how long you got?
I got you for however long.
But some people have no one. And so what does it look like when you have no one and you need to eat? That's why I like the simulators where people have to make decisions. And I'm so glad you gave me this question because whenever I get an opportunity to give the simulator, and Daryl, you can attest to this, to people who just don't want to accept it, they will make the most ridiculous decisions. I'm not going to my mom's funeral. I'm not going to give my kid their cancer medicine, knowing that that's not reality. And so the question is, how do we get people to even care about these things? And that question was posed to me when I was talking about racial justice to a group of this city's we're talking wealthiest citizens. He said, Nicole, thank you so much. Pause. I really appreciate what you shared here today. Pause. When I go back to my home and my gated community, none of this stuff really impacts me. So I get it intellectually. I was hoping you were going to help me get it emotional. I said, did he just tell me he don't care about what I just said?
Yes.
And in the spirit of not judging and stepping into empathy, which remember, this is not sugary kindness. I am not in agreement. I am understanding that what he's saying makes total sense to him. Right? Based on his lens. And that is where I said, wow, we have got to find ways to build empathy. Pastor Montaigne, what you got? Education and economics. How does the quality of education directly impact economics?
I may not have a very popular statement. I'm just going to be honest.
Honest is for you.
I'm going to be truthful.
Okay.
The statement or non-statement might not be very popular, but I've accepted in my life that I will not be able to give people even a reason to understand my truth or the truth that exists. Some people will just not understand that, be it blatant or the inability to adapt to reality, whatever that is for them. So at 32, I've decided not to waste a whole lot of time on convincing people who obviously don't care to care. People who will meet my reality and my lived experience with, but what is happening? Like, I don't have a whole lot of energy. And we were at a breakfast and I had to just say that. Guys, I didn't even apologize. I was just like, I just don't have the energy.
How many of y'all feel the same way though? You think that's not a popular idea? How many of y'all, just show of hands, feel the same way?
Let me say this.
You're not by yourself on this one.
I come from the church where you are to forgive, and I support that. I'll forgive you. I'm not going to waste my time convincing you anymore, though, at all. If it is difficult for you to understand that Black people are mistreated and treated differently than you are, you have to be in a space in your life where you choose not to accept that truth. And it's just, yeah, so I've watched this. I had a grandfather who was a Black nationalist, who practiced Islamic beliefs, the whole gamut. I've seen so much in my life to where I don't have the space anymore. And so facts are facts. There was something that Pastor Brooks said that I'm committed not saying anymore. A courageous conversation. What courageous conversation? It doesn't take courage, it takes truth. What's the truth? If you can't handle the truth.
Hey, I just want to speak to that. I appreciate you asking that question because that's something that we run into. As I said before, that I pastor in Cologne Presbyterian at 95th and Warren, with the big church with the big white columns, and our church's name is Colonial. So I'm not even going to go into that. Because last time I brought it up, it almost split the church. So I'll leave that alone. And this is being live streamed, so I will deal with the damages later. Hey, as my dad said, I was looking for a job when I found this one. But that's one of the Kingdom Oneness team that we have. In 2018, I preached a sermon entitled "I Have a Dream" in honor of the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King. But it was a verse from John 17, where Jesus says, "I pray that they are one as we are one." And my thesis basically was that this dream that Martin Luther King had was not originated from him. He just picked the baton up from Jesus, which means it's a commandment from the church.
Yeah.
From that, we had a group of people come to me and say, "I want to know more." So they came and we had breakfast. We decided to be the bridge to study together, had small groups. And we also had, I got the emails about MLK's past life and all this other kind of stuff around that kind of deal. And some of the questions they asked me at times is that how can we get people more involved in this? And we tried our best. We do things. We got a couple of weekends coming up for MLK. But I am determined that I'm going with the goers. You
What you
know,
call
goers. I'm going with the goers.
them? Going with the goers.
Exactly. Those people, you know, people of peace is another term that some people use. There are people that God will strategically plant in your pathway who are moving in that direction already. Because I don't have time to be going back to Egypt.
Yeah.
I was not built for that. I was not built to lead people back to Egypt.
Yeah.
I just don't have the DNA for that. So I appreciate people like Jody and Marine and others in our church, in our 93% church, since I've been there, because we were 99. Praise God, we're making progress.
You know, there are people who are built to be able to go into spaces and be the first to have the temperament to be able to do that. And so bless you. I will add you to my prayer just to take you to the throne. There's about 10% of people in the world who are like, yes, let's go forward.
And maybe 20, I think, sometimes.
Probably 20. And then there's another group of people, the 10%, who are like, I don't care, I don't want to, I don't want to go. And we always overcorrect to that group of people when there's about 70% of folks in the middle who are just indifferent. The opposite of love is not hate. What is it? It is indifference. It's indifference. And so if I implore you to do anything, it's to stop thinking about the most hateful and think about the indifferent. The people who can be persuaded if somebody would just educate a little more. Mr. Pitts, what you got?
Well, I think I need to push back on something that I think you said.
Go for it.
Did you say that when the white police officers sick the dog on the pastor, they felt trauma?
Yeah. Thank you for pushing back on it. So the question, if you're on live stream, is that when the police officers sick the dog on Pastor Ely, that they felt trauma. Pastor Brooks, is it considered a trauma if I watch, even if I'm the perpetrator, watch somebody else be maimed by a dog?
Yes, so one of the definitions of trauma is secondary trauma. It didn't happen to you, but you saw it. And if you saw it, you can't unsee it. And you had some feeling attached to it, even if your blue uniform tells you to ignore it. Any human that sees somebody get hurt, you can watch a movie and start crying. You ain't in the movie.
Yeah. Push. Come on, give me another.
Well, the thing that I know enough folks who would be able to detach themselves from that action and say, I had to do that because of the position I was put in. And what I did wasn't wrong. In fact, what I did was necessary to protect myself and my community.
Yes. So there are different types of empathy, just like there are different types of trauma. I can tell myself something that's intellectual, that's mental, but the body keeps the score.
Yeah.
Somatic empathy, somatic trauma. My body experienced that trauma even though I have told myself it did not. And so the more I try to tell myself it didn't, the worse I am actually when I get ready to go back out into the world and I see another person who looks like him. Now I'm unconsciously blowing that trauma through more people. So it's even worse if I've mentally told myself it's not a thing. Which is why.
Marcy's looking at that. The other thing is, how many times has somebody said something to you, it hurt you, but you said it didn't hurt? Because you don't want to admit to them that it hurt. And you may not even admit it at that moment. But afterwards, you start processing what happened. That sticks and stones, crazy scenario we quoted when we were kids, sticks and stones, broken bones, words. And we grew up and found out words do hurt. So, but don't put no stick on my shoulder because you know what that means if you knock it off, right?
I'm so glad we've had an opportunity to talk about this because too many people don't understand the way we hold traumas in our bodies. And some of the work of Monaghan is trauma from generations before. So, and he has you do these exercises. You don't even have to read the book if you're not a reader. It's more important to do the exercises than to do the reading. And the sole purpose is to push past what your brain thinks, to release the trauma from your body so that when you do have to make that initial response, it is one that you can be more thoughtful and less harmful to other people. And it's hard to get through that book because you're looking at the abusers as being abused. But that's what they are. That's what they are. Pastor Brooks, he told me to call him Michael, but I can't. I read a book called Working Our Way Home. It was a book from a homeless ex-con and a millionaire art dealer. Highly recommend. Best book I read last year. Denver Moore, who's the homeless ex-con, said that if every single church adopted one person without a home, we could eradicate the houseless situation in our cities. Just one. We know what to do. There's so much affluence in our nation. We don't have to have people living outside. In fact, I remember once we had an exchange student staying with us, and they were asking, what are those houses behind the house? And I said, houses behind the house, what are you talking about? Those houses behind the house. And I said, oh, those are garages. And they said, what? It's for the car. And they said, you have houses for your cars.
Well, Lord.
Some of us got 3, 4, 5 houses for our cars. So could you explore the connection between housing insecurity and psychological trauma? So many people will say that people who are homeless are out there, are homeless because they have a mental health condition. But I think if I had to live outside, I'd probably develop a mental health condition. So what's your experience working in the space, and what would be your best suggestion for the folks listening?
So I'll agree with the conversation about the church, because I'm always coming back to that. I really believe if the church wants to, we can fix everything that's wrong with America. That's what I believe. Everything. Because we're not supposed to be looking at the government to answer the problems. Government should be looking at us to answer, because we're showing them the model. We should have the answers. They should be knocking on our door saying, how can we deal with it? I've been back in Kansas City now for 26 years, and I started here working in the homeless population with Soul Parkway Health Center. It don't take 25 years to solve homelessness. We know exactly how to fix it. We just don't want to. We don't want to spend the money, we don't want to spend the time, and we don't want to give the people that do want to do it the resources to make it happen. Now, we get money to everything else. When I was at City Hall, we had over 250 vacant houses the city didn't know what to do with. And a homeless population that reside mostly downtown. You got 250 houses, and you got people that are homeless. Not a garage, a house that is livable. And you don't want to put these people, why? And what all of us need to understand is there's money in poverty. There's money to be made when people don't have resources, because they are going to do whatever it takes.
They are going to commit crimes. Now you can put them in jail. Now you can build a new jail. You see how it works?
Yeah.
So why would you build a brand new jail knowing that it's not the crime that's the person's problem? Who don't know mental health is a major issue? And dealing with the prison population, they're individuals, and trust me when I tell you, the people committing the crimes, they ain't dumb, they ain't stupid, they just poor. And during this time, I promise you, you go to any store around here, most of them have called the police on somebody that's stealing, who knew they were getting the police called on them and knew they were getting locked up, because guess what? Now they're sleeping out on the street in the cold tonight.
Yeah. They're
going to take them to jail. And guess what the jail got? Food and heat. And at best, they're going to do about 2-3 months. How long does winter last? I know for a fact they would commit crimes in November and December just to get locked up, so they'd be locked up during the winter time. And I'd ask them, why do you keep on coming back? Because I'm getting 3 meals, a bed to sleep in, and it's warm in here. How long did it take us to raise minimum wage to $15? And could anybody in here, based on your lifestyle, live your lifestyle making $15 an hour? So if it's not good enough for us, why would we say it's good enough for somebody else? $15 an hour with 2-3 kids that eat.
You should have made better choices.
So it's
That's what people say.
And I'll end with this, and it's 8:30. So let me end with this because we're talking about anything we need to. But my personal struggle in 2024 that started probably around in 2020 is for people to look like me that don't think this is still a problem. Who have adopted this assimilation to the point they don't even want to come back to the neighborhood and fix what's wrong. We're living now with like the second or third, and I'm not mad at nobody. We fought for y'all to live wherever you want to live, to raise your kids wherever you want to live, raise your kids. But there's a problem now because there's a disconnect from people who have resources and have ability to make some changes, and they're saying, that ain't my neighborhood.
Until you get pulled over by the police 4 times in Gladstone.
One last question, and we're going to
Yes. Go ahead. I can.
Good evening. Good evening. I have a question for my dear friend Fred. He said, because, I'm a little crazy. As a fellow graduate of Park Hill, where the number of Black people didn't change too much from when we graduated, as a Southern Baptist now, I would like to know, even though you are getting into other spaces, how are you pushing this racial healing agenda into the Southern Baptist relationships that you have to hold them accountable to where we go forward?
He didn't turn around. That's a good son.
Yeah. Oh. No, I haven't, the church that I started in the Northland, I went right from Southern Baptist and I started this non-denominational church called Vineyard. So I haven't been a Southern Baptist since 1990. But I was working on a second doctorate at Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in the Hebrew Bible just before I had my unplanned sabbatical. And so I still have a lot of relationships in the Southern Baptist world. And honestly, when we were doing convoy and stuff like that, I actually had most of the larger Southern Baptist churches in Pleasant Valley, and you could rip through some of the bigger Southern Baptist churches in the Northland. Yeah, First Baptist. Yeah, so I was able to move some of those. I'm more progressive now, so I don't know how my Southern Baptist friends still. But these things that we're doing that I just went through. I'll reach out to all of my friends and just challenge them to be a part of it. We did get them involved in the convoy stuff that we did, and so we were moving hundreds of white Northlanders into the core. I remember when I first started doing it, people were worried they were getting shot if they just came down to the core, So that was something. Of course, you grew up with, right?
My face wasn't because I don't believe you.
Yeah, okay. That's literally, people are, well, if I go down there, I'll get shot. That's
Yeah. So real quick question. What was the name of that, the VeggieTale author who made the video? What's the name of that
Phil
video?
Vischer. Although the video is, if you Google Holy Post Race in America.
Holy Post Race in America. Somebody get that. Is it in the VeggieTale?
It's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
And
is it like a cartoon or no?
No, it's just Phil just ripping through 17 minutes of why there's still white privilege and white supremacy in America, basically. He starts with when when slavery was ended, how they passed vagrancy laws so that They basically arrested black men who didn't have homes and put them right back into slavery again. He went into the redlining. He went into the war on drugs, which is basically a war on black people. He went into, the FHA loaning practices with housing. I mean, he just went boom, 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 boom. 17 minutes for white people to understand, hey, there's still an issue, there's still a problem. And so we've got to partner with people who will speak out like that, who still have a platform in the white evangelical church. That's my thing. There's a few people that are out there, and Greg and I have talked about this. We've got, Greg's got a great, he got invited to preach at the seminary, right? At Midwestern, yeah. So he has some influence with that Southern Baptist crowd too. He trained under Tony Evans in Dallas, and so we've got to pull these. I appreciate the challenge, Porsche, and we need to do that for sure.
And we want to just
What church are you in, by the way?
What church are you in?
Yeah.
My daddy's church.
Okay.
We just had a merger with Sterling Acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sterling Acres was a all-white church with the median age of 70, and our church was predominantly black with a median age of 35. And we just merged, and so we're 5 months in, down the street,
All
right here in Raytown.
Okay. Yes.
A couple things that what Pastor Brooks did not mention is the ACEs assessment.
Oh, yes.
So for those of you who are not familiar with adverse childhood experiences assessment, familiarize yourself with it, take the assessment yourself, tell other people to take it, because it is an indicator of how much trauma you have been exposed to, and they've just updated the assessment to make it just more culturally responsive and accurate. And so invite you all to do that. And then I also believe, this is especially true for those of you who are white in the audience, if you have not done the exercises in my grandmother's hands, I invite you to do so. That is your racial healing work that needs to occur. It really is. To understand the racial trauma you hold. Because if I can help you understand your racialized history, I don't know that I have to teach you about mine. My grandmother's hands.
It's a great book.
I would sing it to you, but the song, but I don't.
Hey, are we going to close with the Black National Anthem?
Yes.
Okay, can I make one quick comment? When I was going through my own trauma and in recovery, I couldn't go to a white church. And I went to my friend's church, Macedonia Baptist, John Brooks' church, and just sat in black gospel worship for 45 minutes. And I was there attending during Black History Month, February, right before COVID hit. So I was a white person, like one of 4 white people in a big black church, going through Black History Month in a black church for the first time in my life. Mostly white pastor, Fred, And we sang the Black National Anthem every single Sunday. And I kid you not, when I first was focusing on the words, I probably had heard it at the National Anthem, or different places, football games and stuff like that. But I was reading the words, and I was in my own trauma, and I cried through this song every single time I heard it. And I went up to ask Tim, who's the worship leader there, I said, Tim, what is this song? I'm so embarrassed. I didn't know that I was singing the Black National Anthem. And it's such a powerful song. Oh my gosh. And I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it's true. We never sang the Black National Anthem in the white church.
What year was that?
That was 2020, February 2020.
I'm embarrassed for you.
Well, I have to explain.
Why he was.
No. When I first had our first Black History Month back in 2020 so at Colonial, I had to explain to them what that was and get permission to sing it and explain the background of it in order for us to be able to sing that as a part of our church. We did it once.
I'm not going to comment on that because you still work there. Did y'all know why in black churches people shout and clap and scream and holler? It is a trauma releasing mechanism. And what has happened over time is people have tried to convince us that we should not do that anymore. That is something's wrong with that type of worship. And then what did you notice happened at the same time? Mental health challenges within Black people started to go up. Suicides with Black people started to go up. You have to release trauma from your life. You have to. So we're going to sing the Black National Anthem together, and we're going to sway our bodies together because it is a trauma-releasing mechanism.
Everybody stand. Can y'all give all of our panelists and participants a big hand?
Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure to make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.